Welcome to Horror Mom. This episode is going to be all about the Midnight Club. Spoiler warning, I'm going to be getting right into it. I'm going to be just jumping right in. So if you've not seen this, go watch the show and come back and listen to my breakdown of it, my opinion. I wanted to do this closer to when it came out, but we got sick, and so I'm going to do it now. But this show was a really good show. It's always hard for me to get into new shows, but I have been forcing myself to watch new things so that I'm not so stuck in all the crap that I always watch. You know, the things that you put on like when you're cleaning, things that give you good feelings, or like a warm, comfortable security blanket that are always there. You always know how they're going to turn out, but new things are good too. This show takes place in the 90s. So you know what that means. Amazing 90s music. And it had plenty of it. So the show starts out with high school girls crashing a college party. The main girl, whose name is Alanka, she's pretending to be an English major, but you can tell that she has a lot of knowledge about English. Probably was her favorite subject in high school. She said that a woman wrote Frankenstein. I don't know if that's true. I didn't look it up, but if it's true, that's really cool. So during the party, she starts coughing up blood and then hallucinates before she passes out. So when she goes to the doctor, she finds out she has terminal thyroid cancer. And she decides that since she can't go to college, she wants to go to this place called Bright Cliff. Bright Cliff is a place with other kids with terminal illnesses. And the place is headed up by Dr. Stanton, who's played by Heather Langenkamp, also known as Nancy from the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Gotta be honest, you can kind of tell she hasn't acted in a while. I know that when she, I guess, as popular as the Nightmare on Elm Street movies were, and the cult status that it's come to have, I think she had trouble getting acting jobs after that. She did do some TV, which she did a show. I don't remember what it's called, but she did a show with, I think her name is Brooke Thies, who was in Nightmare on Elm Street 4, who died, who had the roach death scene. They were in a show together. But other than that, I think she's been involved mostly with special effects because her husband, I think he owns a special effect company. So she's worked with him and probably had like some one-off acting jobs since then. So her acting initially seems kind of rusty, but people, I think, in the original Nightmare on Elm Street movies, I think that there were some people that took issue with her acting then. But I feel like as the series went along, the acting got a little bit better. Anyway, Alanka wants as close to a college experience as she can get because she cannot go to college like she had planned to. She wanted to go to Stanford. You meet all the other kids, and it's a really solid cast. I really like all the other kids. They're super strong on their own, and then all together, it's a great ensemble. So these kids, they get together in the middle of the night to tell scary stories. When I saw the trailer for this and saw some things that people were talking about it, or saw some things that people were saying about it, they were comparing it to Are You Afraid of the Dark, which is of my generation. Yeah. I got a Goosebumps t-shirt on. It's not Are You Afraid of the Dark, but like child of the 90s here. So there were some comparisons to Are You Afraid of the Dark, but obviously it's a different show. One of the main differences as far as the meeting and the telling of the stories, in Are You Afraid of the Dark, the cast that got together to tell the stories was one set of kids. And then each episode, they had, the stories that they told, they had different kids in the stories. And then there were some recurring characters like Dr. Vink and Sardo. Oh my God. I have a Sardo t-shirt that I got from this company called High School Pizza, and they sell it on this website called Store Frontier. I had to collect as many Are You Afraid of the Dark shirts as I could. I got the Sardo one, which I'll put a picture here if you're watching the YouTube version of this. And then I got Zeebo the Clown. Oh crap, what was the name of that other clown from the comic book episode? Oh, that's gonna bother me. The Ghastly Grinner. I got a Ghastly Grinner t-shirt. And then I think that I saw that this Sunday, he's the person who runs, because I follow them on Instagram. The person who runs the high school t-shirt Instagram page said that they are going to be taking away the Are You Afraid of the Dark collection. So I went in there and got one more t-shirt, which is, I wasn't planning on getting it, but then I saw that it had the title, The Tale of the Night Shift, and it's the vampire guy from Tale of the Night Shift. So I had to get that because the day prior, I didn't think I was going to get any more t-shirts, but the day prior, I wasn't going to buy more t-shirts for like a couple weeks, a month or whatever from this company. So I got that one. A couple of days prior, I got Trolls 2 t-shirt because they don't just do Are You Afraid of the Dark. They do so many nostalgic t-shirts that this person who owns this company has got to be around my age because there's so much crap on there that I want to buy. Does anybody remember Trolls 2? It is such a bad movie, but it's so bad it's good. And I saw it somehow. My parents bought these really obscure B-movie horror movies, and I loved them when I was a child. So I loved them, but also I was scared of them. But somehow my parents got a hold of Trolls 2. And if you know about Trolls 2, like, you are my kind of people because it's very niche and I think it has a cult following now. There's even a documentary about the movie and the people in the movie, and it's kind of wild. I recommend seeing both the movie and the documentary on the movie. It used to be on Amazon Prime for a while, but I think they took it off. Anyway, because the woman who plays the mother in Trolls 2, in real life, like, I think she has some problems. Like, it was actually really uncomfortable watching her in the documentary. So if that's a draw for you. And then the guy who played the dad is a dentist in real life. Like, this was a super low budget movie. And for some reason, I forget his story about how he came to acting in the movie, but in real life, he's a dentist. And I think he's still a dentist. But anyway, I went on that website to get this Trolls 2 t-shirt. It's got stills from the movie, and they had another one that I guess sold out or they stopped carrying that was green and it had Neilbog on the t-shirt with like the goblins from the town because Neilbog is goblin spelled backwards. I really wanted that one too, but like I wanted all the t-shirts that they offered, and they're like $20 a piece, and so like obviously that builds up. And the thing that sucks about especially small t-shirt companies is their inventory only lasts for a small amount of time. And so it's like you want to buy them all, but like you shouldn't buy them all at one time. So this company though, their t-shirts are around for a little bit. So you have some time to kind of collect things. And I'm a very big collector and nostalgic, particularly creepy, but also anything nostalgic. Like I've got Golden Girls t-shirts. I want to collect more. On this High School Pizza Store Frontier website, they have Clarissa Explains It All, Secret World of Alex Mack, the Three Ninjas movies, Adventures of Pete and Pete, like just all the nostalgic things, and I want them all. I want them all. So I don't just only do creepy, but that's kind of my specialty. Obviously, this Horror Mom podcast. Okay, I've gone off on a tangent. Sorry. So yeah, aside from for Are You Afraid of the Dark, kind of coming back around here, from Are You Afraid of the Dark, they have some recurring characters like Dr. Vink and Sardo, and they make references to Zeebo, the clown, a lot, but generally the casts are different people than the kids telling the stories. So Midnight Club, though, the kids that are telling the stories are acting them out when they are showing the stories. So, and then they also include other kids in their stories too that are in the club. So that is a little bit of a difference, but the themes are very horror sci-fi, which is in line with how Are You Afraid of the Dark did their stories. I am super into both horror and sci-fi because I feel like they intertwine a lot, you know? Like They can be different, but there's so many similarities between sci-fi and horror, and a lot of times stories will include both elements. Every meeting, they start off with the same, kind of like how Are You Afraid of the Dark does, like submitted for the approval of a Midnight Society. In the Midnight Club, they start the meeting with to those before, to those after us. Now, wait, to those before, to those, okay, Jesus Christ. To those before, to those after, to those before, to the, I can't read my own notes. To those before, to those after, to us now, and to those beyond, seen or unseen, here but not here. That is how they start every meeting. They all have a pact that whichever one of them is next to pass away, that they will come back. And I'm getting goosebumps. They have a pact that whoever passes away will come back and give them signs as to what is next. What is the afterlife, if there is anything. Oh, seriously. Okay, they're starting to go away, but like, I got goosebumps. Oh. Ilonka, her first story, she tells a story of a girl who was at Brightcliff, and then mysteriously went away, disappeared for a while, and then came back cancer-free. But when she came back, she could predict the deaths of all the people around her. And it turns out that this person is a real person. So every time Ilonka goes out into the woods, she runs into this woman who calls herself Shasta. And she has red hair, which the girl from the story who comes back cured somehow from cancer has red hair. You kind of pretty early on draw the connection that they're one and the same. But my initial reaction was like, is she actually a ghost though? Because she always shows up when Ilonka's in the woods. But then she does say that they have a camera on their property because Ilonka wanders up on their camera, up on their property because their property is right next to Brightcliff. But she's just like, has this really special interest in Ilonka. And every time Ilonka's out in the woods, Shasta is out. And she's telling her certain herbs to get and just certain things that have healing properties. And then eventually she tells her about this spell that is supposed to cure her of her cancer. And she gets the kids to do this spell. And it turns out one of the kids actually, they say is misdiagnosed, but Ilonka thinks that the spell worked on that kid and just not her. And it turns out, like, you think in the beginning, or at least what is portrayed is that Shasta is trying to help other kids the way that she was helped. But then it turns out she's actually evil because she gets her way back into Brightcliff with Ilonka, brings some people over from her commune, and gets them to drink from these cups as part of this spell. But Ilonka starts getting freaked out and doesn't drink, but the other girls do. And it turns out it's poison. And we learn that Shasta's real name is Julia. She was healed as a kid, but now she's evil and tries to poison people because she's sick again. So that is Shasta's story. And Shasta and Dr. Stanton appear to both have a history. Like, I thought that there was something deeper to their history because rather than just the fact that they own property next to each other, they kind of seem to know each other from way back. So it seems that they knew each other somehow when they were younger, maybe. There's a scene in the show in one of the episodes where Dr. Stanton is in group with the kids. So they kind of have therapy sessions to deal with their feelings and things that they're going through at the end of their lives. And if you are a Nightmare on Elm Street freak like I am, Nightmare on Elm Street is my favorite. Nightmare on Elm Street 4 is my favorite movie of all time. Not just my favorite in the installment, but my favorite movie of all time. It's the movie I've watched most in my life. It's like a big warm hug. It's so good. I will eventually be talking about Nightmare on Elm Street. It's just, I almost feel not nervous, but just like I want to save them for later because I just really want to do them justice because they're my favorite. I've loved them for so long. And I feel like there's so much to talk about that I don't even know how I'm going to be able to do it. Like, I don't know. It might wind up being so many episodes of Nightmare on Elm Street. So if you like Nightmare on Elm Street, you're in the right place. Check back later for some of those episodes. I'm just getting started. This is only the second episode of the podcast. The scene where Dr. Stanton is sitting around with the kids definitely harkens back to Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors, where you're also in a hospital with a bunch of kids who are not terminal, but they all have one frightening issue that's threatening their lives, which is Freddy, of course. So I don't know if that was intentional, but I have a feeling that it was. Ilonka has an angry Irish roommate called Anya, because all the kids kind of deal with things differently. You know, Anya is very angry about what's happening to her. Other kids deal with what's happening to them with humor. And so there's a mix. Again, the cast is really great. One really crazy fact about this is Heather Langenkamp, who plays Dr. Stanton, had a son in real life, and I get goosebumps again, who died from brain cancer in 2018. And 2018 was not that far away. And she plays a doctor who owns this hospital who had a child that died from terminal cancer. So the character had a child that died from terminal cancer. She had a child. Goosebumps. Oh. She had a child that died from terminal cancer in real life. And honestly, 2018 is not far enough away that I could do that. She has got to be an insanely strong person to take this acting job because personally, I feel like it would be way too close to home to me. But it just gives that added layer. I don't know that if a lot of people know that about her. If you looked into her, you would. But I love her because of all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And I had heard a little while ago that that had happened to her. So I drew that connection and that was nuts. Kudos to her to be able to do that. I definitely could not. I didn't mention her son's name in real life was Atticus, and he was 26 years old. Died from brain cancer. The stories that the kids tell are actually really good. So, like I said, there's kind of like a horror and sci-fi mix element to it. Anya tells a story about Dana the ballerina. That story was pretty rough. So, the gist of that story is some kind of a witch or a genie comes to Dana, who's played by Anya. You know, they play in their own stories. The witch or the genie, I can't remember what it is played by Heather Langenkamp. So she plays Dr. Stanton and she kind of makes a cameo and some of the kids' stories playing other characters. Ballerina is, as you would imagine, on a very regimented, rigid schedule. Everything is super, super rigid. So this, I'm just going to call it a witch. This witch comes to her and tells her she can have a wish. And I think that we've learned our lesson through like stuff like Wishmaster. Does anybody remember Wishmaster from the 90s? That was nuts. Also Leprechaun, those Leprechaun movies. So in both movies, they grant people wishes, but the wishes go horribly wrong. So as you can imagine, her wish gets kind of twisted. So she wishes almost like she could live two different lives and experience both because she likes being a ballerina, but she also wants to let loose. She's granted her wish, and for a while, it's really cool. One version of her is doing her ballerina thing. The other version is out there having a lot of sex and doing a lot of drugs. But the other version of her kind of spirals out of control and she becomes an addict, and then it becomes a problem for ballerina Dana. And she winds up, one of them winds up dying, being killed by the other. And then the one of them who dies goes to a bad place. And then the person who's still alive is experiencing all the turmoil that the other is experiencing after death. Pretty cool, right? That's a really cool story. So it's stories like that, pretty good quality stories in here, as well as the main storyline. Just a good show overall. And it's definitely geared more towards teens, young adults. I'm a 36-year-old woman, married, mother of one, but it was still good to me, you know? Because I feel like if it's good quality, it's good quality. If it's good, you'll enjoy it, even if it's not necessarily geared towards your demographic, because I gave it a chance. And with each episode, honestly, the show got better and better. Because, like I said, it's really hard for me to get into a new show, but each episode got better and better, which is good. Some of the stories are pretty brutal. Like, there's a story about this boy who is kind of influenced from his dead mother, his dead grandpa, to kill girls. And so you see him like bashing in a girl's head, and it's pretty rough. And that story is kind of like a story that kind of like has cliffhanger endings and gets told, like added onto throughout the show as the show goes on. One of the sci-fi episodes was about these people that go back in time to save the world. That one was actually pretty good. There's, these like different timelines. So like in the present day, or the time that they go back to, I should say, there's this boy who likes this girl that works at a shop that he goes to, but she's in another relationship. He meets this other guy in, I think it's like a comic book or gaming shop. He meets this other older guy who's into gaming, who, it's kind of hard to explain, but like he's kind of like a legend in this field that the younger boy is interested in. And so the older guy kind of takes him under his wing. But then you find out the older guy is really the younger guy from the future, come back to save the world, because the love interest of the girl becomes president and like crazy, drunk with power, and does something to end the world. But then these people come back, or these angels, and they give the guy who's like in a space station outside of the planet that got destroyed, they give him a chance to go back and prevent all this from happening. So, and then the story has a happy ending, because actually what winds up happening is not their intention. They intend to go back to kill the guy who's going to go and become an evil president. But what winds up happening is, so the girl tries to kill the guy, but she winds up getting run over. And then it winds up changing the evil guy and turns him to a good person, so he does good in the future. I hope I explained that well enough. But that was really, really good. Eventually, the Midnight Club, they find the original meeting place in a roster of the original Midnight Club in the basement. And then they also, if they outlive their death day, they have ceremonies, kind of almost like a funeral, but like not, that commemorate that day. So they have ceremonies on what would have been their death day, and they bring their clothes that they would have been buried in at their funeral. And they kind of like do a kind of FU, I lived ceremony. Anya and Ilanka, the angry Irish woman, the angry Irish girl, and Ilanka, who's one of the main characters. Well, they're all main characters, you know what I mean. They kind of didn't get along at first. Anya has been there for longer, and her previous roommate had passed away. So these kids all get really close. They'll get very attached to one another. So when one of them dies, it's very devastating. And so kids come in and they go out. And so when new kids come, they inevitably will get attached to them, and then they pass away. So Anya, I think, didn't want to get attached to Ilanka, but they wind up becoming very close because they're roommates. They all have this shared experience that they're going through. They all know that they're going to die, and they can't help but get close. The episode where Anya dies. So this is the first time that one of the main characters that we were introduced to dies. And the way that they did her death was really interesting. It wasn't just straightforward. They tell it as if she's telling a story, because they're all characters in their own stories. But she's actually dying. And so in her mind, she was the person that was cured, and she goes off to live her life. But she's actually dying. So, because it shows her trying to rebuild her life after being cured, she's like, really, sir? Really? I hate loud cars. They're so annoying. Okay. So, in her mind, as she's dying, she doesn't know she's dying, I guess, up until the end, because in this episode, there's a common thread where, like, at a certain time, her alarm clock will go off and she, like, hears the Midnight Club. She can hear them talking. But really, they're talking to her as she's dying, if I remember correctly, because it's been a little while since I watched the show. But in her mind, she got healed. She's living in an apartment by herself. She's working at this grocery store. But then in the end, you realize that the radio that keeps going off that she's hearing is really, I guess, people saying goodbye to her. And I thought it was a very interesting way to show that she died versus just something more straightforward. It was very creative, and I liked it a lot. In the Road to Nowhere episode, that one felt like a throwback. It felt like a throwback to like an episode of Beyond Belief. If you know Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction, also you're in the right place. Well, actually, you're in the right place-ish. I have another podcast called Beyond Unsolved, which was inspired by Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction, and Unsolved Mysteries episodes. But anyways, it felt like an episode from Beyond Belief. It's this girl who's driving by herself at night, and she picks up two mysterious hitchhikers. And this show also gave me chills because it was such a good episode. They're driving down this road, and a lot of things start having some repetition to it. You're kind of scared of the guy because you think that he's a serial killer, and the girl in the back is equally as terrifying because you kind of think that they're like maybe like a team of serial killers, because there are I'm sure I'll get into it in my Beyond Us All podcast because I want to get into like, you know, true crime stuff there. But there have been, I think they're kind of rare, but like there have been male-female serial killer teams before. So you kind of don't know, but things start happening over and over again, which I feel like is a common theme in sci-fi and horror stories where actually, you know, there's a little bit of that Nightmare on Elm Street 4. But you start to realize that this story is a hallucination of a girl who is in her car inside of a garage that is filling with carbon monoxide. So it's a dream / hallucination. And this, you learn that is actually the girl in the story that is dying from carbon monoxide. I think the character's name is Natsuki, the girl who's telling the story. This is her actual story. So, and this was my favorite episode. This was my favorite story. This was my favorite episode. So, you know, of the series so far. So, this girl had depression after her dad died and decided that she was going to end her life. Her mother found her and she lived. But then she finds out that she survives that only to find out that she actually has terminal cancer. Isn't that nuts? Like, you go to end your life, you're found and you live, and then you find out that you have terminal cancer, and then you realize you actually want to live, but you don't have control over that anymore. That's pretty crazy. The story, of course, has love interest. There's a couple people that kind of get together to add all you know, to all the more, you know, gut-wrenching when maybe they eventually pass away. So there's layers. There's things that happen that get you attached to these characters, that get you to like these characters, that gets you invested. And so it has it all. It has love interest. It has scary stories. It has death. It has it all. But the ending. So I feel like there was some kind of, there was a point in the story where I felt like it kind of alluded to maybe Brightcliff like almost feeds on the death that comes through it. So the ending of Dr. Stanton taking off her wig and she's bald, and then you see a photo of her looking like from the past, looking oddly similar to how she looks today, and she owns Brightcliff. So it made me think that maybe she was a patient there before because she has a history with Shasta, aka Julia, and that maybe there is something to those spells. And if she owns Brightcliff and she is still young when she should be older, maybe she and Brightcliff are feeding off these kids, and maybe there is a way for these kids to get better. I'm pretty sure this was renewed for a second season, so we're gonna find out. Maybe those questions will be answered. So the ending was great. The show overall was great. I have no complaints. Such a good show. And give me your opinions if you're on YouTube and you're watching this. Let me know in the comments. Give the video a like. If you're listening to this on podcast format, follow me there. Leave me a good review if you like this episode. And that is it for this episode of Horror Mom. So I will see you in my next video or my next podcast episode.